Hi everyone. In this video we're going to be talking about how to play better online chess. This is a subject I'll go deeper on in other videos, but today I just want to start with 5 practical tips that you can use in your own games to see better results straight away. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'll also then be chucking in a bonus tip which I think everyone should be doing after their games, but very few people actually tend to do this. So tip number 1 is think on your opponent's turn. Now it's a very simple thing to do, but we're all guilty of not necessarily doing it as proactively as we should. And it's a very powerful thing to put into practice during your games because not only will you start to absorb the position more deeply and spot more tactics and themes in the position, you'll actually start to anticipate what your opponent is about to play. And that can then help you with the powerful tip number 2, which is use pre-moving to your advantage. So this is where online chess has a big advantage over the board chess, in that we can actually execute a pre-move before our opponent has even moved, and that way we can anticipate what they're going to play and have our response ready prepared to meet that move. The only thing we have to be careful of when pre-moving is that we don't anticipate wrongly and then execute a move which actually worsens our position. So for example, if our opponent could capture one of our pieces, then we'd be ill-advised to have a pre-move already prepared if we're then going to lose a piece in the process of making a separate pre-move. So that is something to be careful of, and something that you have to really build through experience of playing online. You'll then start to understand when pre-moves are appropriate and when they're not. My third top tip is watch out for unprotected pieces, and this relates to your own pieces and also your opponent's. On the board here we can see this tip in action. It's white to move, and a tactical opportunity has presented itself by the fact that black has an unprotected piece and also an exposed king. So if you want to look for the tactic here, I'd suggest you pause the video, but if not, we'll continue on here. So in this position, white is now able to play the queen into d5, where it now gives a check to the king on g8, and it also hits the unprotected rook on a8. So once the king sidesteps out of the check, white can now take the rook in the corner on a8 and should go on to win the game. My fourth tip is look out for checks. So we saw in the previous position the danger that black faces when he has an exposed king and unprotected pieces. We've moved the position along here so that black has now been able to develop more pieces and his rook on a8 is no longer unprotected. But the black king on g8 is still exposed along the a2 g8 diagonal here, and so black wants to move the king away from this diagonal as a form of prophylaxis to avoid future checks along this diagonal from the white pieces, especially from the white queen. So to do this, black now takes his king from g8 and moves it to h7, and this is a form of prophylaxis or a prophylactic move, with the idea being that black has made a move in anticipation of his opponent's threats. This idea of prophylaxis brings me on to my fifth tip, which is avoid weakening your position if you're unsure of what to do. In this position, it's white to move, and if white were unsure of what to do and time was ticking down, he may play a pawn move such as pawn to h4, lashing out here and hoping one day to take the pawn on g5, and after black recaptures with the h6 pawn, then jump in with the white knight and check the king. So if black were to play an innocuous move here like pawn to a6, then white could capture on g5, and if black were to recapture with the h6 pawn, white can jump in here and give the check, and suddenly the position has turned around. However, if black were to play a more accurate move and bring the queen out to g4 here, suddenly threatening mate in 1 and bringing the queen into the danger area, then we can see why moving the white pawn to h4 was actually a bad move which further weakened the white position. So if we run it back a couple of moves here, we can look at how white could have played differently to not weaken his position in such a damaging way. One example of a better white move here would be rook d to e1, therefore covering the e2 square from any knight jumps, and not doing any damage to the position through the form of pawn moves. White still has a difficult position to play, and black is certainly better here, but by playing in this more controlled way through the use of a waiting move, at least white hasn't actually damaged his position any further and made life easier for black. So that covers 5 really practical tips that you can instantly use in your online chess games to help you improve your results. The final bonus tip to chuck in is analyze your games after you've played them. It's very easy to just keep playing game after game when you're playing online chess and not actually learning from your mistakes or where you went wrong. So the more you can do so, I'd recommend to open up the engine after you've played and have a quick look at where you could have improved. Maybe you missed a tactical shot partway through the game. Maybe you missed a strategic idea as well. So it's worth looking at these things because then you can stop making the same mistakes over and over again in your chess games, especially if you're playing a similar opening time after time and keep getting caught in the same trap. So that covers off some simple practical tips that you can use in your online chess. I hope that helps and you see some improvements in your results. If you have any questions, do let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hope to see you again on another video.